Morgan Stanley Infrastructure, India Investment Portfolio. As a leading infrastructure fund, Morgan Stanley has been an important investor in India since 2009, with over $500 million committed in one of the world's fastest growing large economies. Our 4 portfolio companies here are generating clean power, reducing carbon emissions, improving transport links and industrial productivity, and creating jobs in a country which possesses one of the world's most attractive demographic profiles with a median age of just 27.
I'm Raja Parthasarathi and I'm responsible for Morgan Stanley Infrastructure in India, along with my colleague Shyam Sundar and our senior advisor Louis Miranda. The 3 of us worked very closely together for several years investing in Indian infrastructure before joining Morgan Stanley in 2014. And we are excited to be a part of a firm that has a rich legacy in India. Infrastructure is at an inflection point in our country. For most of the first 50 years after independence in 1947, the government developed, built, owned and operated all infrastructure assets. The first wave of privatization reforms in the 1990s saw the introduction of private sector entrepreneurs into the infrastructure sector, and today a substantial and growing portion of infrastructure is actually being developed, built, owned and operated by the private sector. Infrastructure is and will remain for the near future a compelling growth opportunity in India. The Indian government estimates that over $1 trillion of infrastructure investment are required over the next 10 years. And around half of that will need to come from the private sector. That is an ambitious number, but there is an abundance of entrepreneurs building outstanding businesses across the value chain that are catalyzing India's economic growth.
I'm Shyam Sundar. I co-head Morgan Stanley Infrastructure in India with Raja. In 2002, Louis and I set up IDFC Private Equity, India's first private equity fund focused on infrastructure. Over the period of last 12 years, we invested in more than 25 companies, partnered with best entrepreneurs in the space, and invested in the wide range of infrastructure sector, ranging from roads and ports, airports, to healthcare and education. We are fortunate to be at the right time, at the right place. Since 2010, Indian infrastructure story has been challenged by various things, which includes crony capitalism, lax lending practices, unwanted judicial and regulatory interventions, and misplaced activism. Projects worth over $80 billion has been stuck for want of approvals or want of capital. To us, that's where the opportunity exists. Prime Minister Modi and his government have focused on infrastructure development, and they are committed to drive a transformational agenda for the sector over the period of next 5 years. They have been ably supported by the central bank, which has also announced favorable policies for infrastructure financing. We already see green shoots emerging on the policy front. With a decisive mandate and the government's focus on infrastructure sector, we believe the infrastructure opportunities looks bright in India.
As I look back at my involvement with infrastructure, which goes back to 2002, I do so with pride. We were able to create a financial proposition for a large number of domestic and foreign institutional investors, and we were also able to justify the trust that they placed in us. If there's one thing that Shyam, Raja and I have learned since 2002 investing in infrastructure, is the value of relationships, especially in private companies. We have had the privilege of becoming like family to a large number of entrepreneurs that we invested in, and we've been invited to participate in multiple future investments in their companies in multiple different businesses. And this trust has been built because of 3 values that we believe strongly in: being fair, being honest, and being passionate about the businesses these entrepreneurs are involved in. The 3 of us have been fortunate to have seen multiple investments through their life cycle, and we've created many exits in our portfolio companies. Some of these exits have been through very difficult market conditions. We look forward to bringing this collective experience to Morgan Stanley.
Morgan Stanley Infrastructure Partners had faith in the Indian renewable sector and demonstrated by making an investment commitment in Continuum when we had a very small project under development. Since the investment in 2012, we now have 250 megawatts of operating capacity, and by middle of 2015 we expect to cross 400 megawatts. They have been supporting us on our differentiated strategy of focusing on cost per megawatt hour rather than on megawatt alone, and we believe they have inspired us to be in best in class. We are proud of our partnership with Morgan Stanley, and we are excited about the future of building Continuum.
Today I would like to acknowledge the contributions of Morgan Stanley Infrastructure. First and foremost, primarily because they came in as an investor, as a foreign investor into our asset at a very critical juncture when the whole global financial crisis was at its peak in 2009, and our existing financial investors were exiting, and Morgan Stanley was able to take a critical call on the prospects of growth for this bridge, and they invested at that critical time in 2009.
With a reform-minded government in place that enjoys a dominant parliamentary majority, key macroeconomic indicators pointing in the right direction, the anticipated beginning of meaningful structural reforms and the start of a new capex investment cycle, India is re-emerging as an attractive investment destination. With a senior team in place that has deep experience in managing infrastructure investment through their life cycle, Morgan Stanley Infrastructure is committed to playing a pivotal role in India's infrastructure story.